And Amy, well, over the weekend, President Trump sat down with a hard-hitting interview by Jesse Waters. Okay. Hey, Obama got interviewed by some chick in a bathtub, so, cut the guy some slack. Jesse Waters is a step up from that. But covered a number of topics, including tax reform and what that's going to look like, and Trump started throwing out numbers.
Well, I'd like to see zero if you don't make much. Like zero, and that's what it's going to be. It's going to be zero up to a level.
Okay.
And then it's going to be 12.5%, 15%. It's going to be 10%. We're working on the different numbers, but it's going to be much lower than it is right now. It'll be the biggest tax cut since Reagan and probably bigger than Reagan.
0, 12.5, 15, 10. Wait, that's not, is that an order?
No.
He's throwing a lot of numbers at me. He's confusing me. I'm dizzy. I need Jim Pethokoukis from the American Enterprise Institute to help us decipher those data points. Jim, thanks for joining us. Sorry about our Northwestern Wildcats, but they can no longer be called the Wildcats after that performance against Gonzaga.
No apologies.
Yes.
Fantastic performance. Did great.
Yeah, they were reminiscent of your run on Jeopardy, the run to the tournament this year.
Yes, they were. 1 and out.
Do you remember your final Jeopardy question, Jimmy?
Well, I had two. I won just like the Wildcats. I won my first, lost my second. And the one my winning question was when they redid the White House press office. Who did they name the press office after?
Oh, James Brady.
Well, that's right.
Yeah.
I got that right,
anybody,
which scares me.
It just shows you anybody can be a Jeopardy champion.
What one did you get
wrong?
wrong?
Or go to Northwestern.
Please don't detract from my victory.
All right, well, what's the question you got wrong?
It's escaped my mind.
Yes,
really?
he's blocked it out.
Yeah, I think they did. I think on that Jeopardy they just put up a list of quadratic equations.
It was your Goodwill Hunting moment, and you failed. All right. Well, so I want to get to your iconoclastic op-ed about the Ryan repeal plan in a minute. But what about Trump's tax reform proposal? He started running numbers with Jesse Waters, 0, 12.5, 15, 10. Those sound good?
Well, I'm sure Trump has the best numbers, and those are really fantastic numbers. But I don't think they were all numbers, because I'm pretty sure that whenever this plan finally emerges, his version of the plan, there's going to be much higher numbers, because the House GOP plan has much higher numbers than 12 and 15 and 0. This plan is probably going to lose money no matter what. I think it's only a matter whether it loses a little bit of money or a lot of money. So that really puts a limit to how low he can cut the taxes. But I'm sure I find it very hard to believe that at the end of the day that they don't pass some sort of tax cut. I mean, the Republicans have the presidency, House and Senate, and they're not going to end up doing a tax cut. I think it's going to be tough. I think it's going to be smaller than what they think, but I have a hard time believing it won't happen.
Are you sanguine, though, about the impact that the tax reduction will have, the structural tax reductions will have, even if they're not as big as you or I would propose, or even that a lot of Republicans would want, but this is what they think they can do?
Well, I think the U.S. economy can be doing better than what it currently is. I'm not a big believer that any one change is like the key thing we need to restore, economy that's growing as fast as we'd like. So I think this will help. I think sort of the more sweeping the reform, assuming it's not a huge budget buster, the better. But I think it's important they do pass some sort of corporate tax reform. I'm guessing in the end they will. But I know this is maybe in the weeds, but a couple of years ago, the House Ways and Means Chairman Dave Camp had a big tax reform plan.
Mm-hmm.
The final plan might look a lot like that. And it was moderately helpful for growth. So I think that's the realistic expectation, that you get a plan that's modestly helpful for growth, but isn't going to be, some spectacular plan that's going to solve all our problems.
And with solving problems is to have more job opportunities and actual jobs. And Donald Trump, on the campaign trail, promised 25 million positions created, mainly manufacturing jobs. Do you see a fourth of that even coming to fruition?
Well, Listen, again, I was told there'd be no math on here, and you're asking me to divide fantasy numbers by 4.
Fantasy.
Listen, I think we have a pretty low unemployment rate. I think there's people on the sidelines that we can get in. I think boosting manufacturing jobs, you could do that modestly, but I think it's more likely that a lot of those jobs are going to be done by robots. I think there's some things you can do. But I think that is a pluck out of air number.
Mm-hmm.
Just like when Trump was talking about 5, 6, 7% growth. We're going to grow like China. So I would be very skeptical that we're going to have that many new jobs, particularly in manufacturing.
Right, but part of it is job creation, but the other issue is wage growth, too. I mean, this stagnation of wage growth, thus people's real incomes dropping over the last 15 years, that needs to see some reversal, and certainly reducing taxes on work will help.
Listen, I would like to see what wage growth does if we would grow at 3 to 3.5% for 5 years. I think if we were to do that, and you still saw the gains basically not going toward the top, 10%, 5%, 1%, then you have to do some other things. I think you have to do some other things anyway, especially with education, because I'm very confident that if we grow very fast, wages will rise, but of course we want them to rise, for everybody, and in a way that people find sort of just intuitively fair and equitable.
Now I want to get to this review of the Paul Ryan Obamacare replacement that you authored, which suggests, being the kind of provocateur that you are, the Milo Yiannopoulos of the American Enterprise Institute.
Oh,
I'm kidding. But the argument that you made that what has been proposed is something that will make single payer more likely. How?
Listen, right. Democrats would love to have a single payer. They viewed Obamacare as a step in that direction, with as a down payment, with more on the way. That's why they're talking. That's why Hillary Clinton was talking about putting a public option, into the exchanges. And Republicans said, no, we have a better idea. We can you give it to us. We don't have to go that direction, even though there's a lot of big advanced economies that have done that. We can go a more free market direction, and they've had years to put a plan together. And if they aren't able to put together a plan that shows how you can have a more free market system that can provide very broad coverage, that can slow the growth in premiums, if they cannot do that, then you've left the field wide open to people who have other ideas. Democrats have many, many ideas. They can point out that, hey, Elizabeth Warren, if she runs for president, will have a single-payer plan. She can say, hey, my plan has worked in these countries. Let's move more toward that direction. So this is an opportunity for the free marketeers to come through, and I don't think they came through, and they can still fix this plan perhaps, but they're not going to have too many more bites at the apple.
well, do you think they should be allowed to sell insurance across state lines to drum up more competition to lower the costs?
You know what? When I talk to healthcare economists, left and right, and if I would give me a list of all the things we can do to improve coverage and make it more affordable, on a list of 10 things, that would be like 13.
Well, right. I mean,
it's not an important. It's simply not an important thing, but it's an easy thing to say because it doesn't cost any money. It sounds like deregulation. And listen, if that's anyone's big idea, basically they don't have any idea. So that is not going to be the magic fix. I'm sorry.
But don't you expect? I mean, you can't be surprised that you've got kind of an amalgam of free market oriented reforms like expanded health savings accounts plus in big government entitlements, because that's just the nature of the beast. And when your Republican Party concedes an entitlement, then all you can really do is try and make it as least offensive as possible by including some free market components as well. I mean, it's not like Republicans, even those critical from a free market perspective of the Ryan plan, are running around suggesting that we need to repeal and replace Medicare. What's the difference?
Well, I do believe there are some Republicans who would like to substantially reform Medicare, and I thought one of those people was Paul Ryan.
Right.
I think the goal is not to have, the kind of plan, a quote-unquote free market plan that you could draw on a blackboard and it'd be very neat and elegant, and you could describe the whole thing in a paragraph. I think you want to be directionally toward a more free market plan, and I think the Ryan plan moves, so incrementally in that direction, while at the same time not fulfilling the promises about coverage that they talked about. They really made a huge mistake. I think there's time to fix it, and hopefully they'll come up with something different, and the Senate will come up with something different. But you can't be talking about it for years and then come up with a plan that is sort of needs a ton of work. It's sort of discouraging and demoralizing.
Yeah, it's a fair point. He is Jim Pethokoukis, CNBC contributor, also columnist for the American Enterprise Institute. Jim, I want to dispatch you up to Middlebury, too, to reckon with those kids that assaulted that professor while your colleague, Dr. Charles Murray, was up there. What do you think? Me and you go up there? Some Northwestern justice?
If I do, I'm going up there wearing my Northwestern sweatshirt and a catcher's mask.
Yeah.
There you go. He is Jim Pethokoukis of the American Enterprise Institute, part of the intellectual firepower at AEI with Arthur Brooks and Charles Murray and Rick Hess and Mark Perry and so many others. James, thanks for joining us. As always, appreciate it.
As always, thanks for having me on, guys. Bye.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.